Hello. Hey, welcome back to Carl's Off the Grid, guys. Got to thinking about some of the chores that I got to get done before the springtime comes. And one thing that I've been neglecting for a while is I got to go ahead and start making some fishing jigs, some things to help me get some of those spring walleyes. For you fishermen and people that eat fish, you know there's nothing better tasting than a spring walleye out of the ice cold water. It's great to have you back on the channel. This week's been really cool. I had an awesome week. I hope that you guys had a great week. One of the highlights of my week was I was able to go out and see my new grandson and catch up with my two sons that are living out in Idaho right now. And when we were all done visiting, then I was able to take my wife and one of my daughters to Vegas and spend an afternoon and evening in Vegas and just had a great time. So anyways, life is good. So anyways, to get back on topic here, we got to get making some fishing jigs, and I figured this would be kind of cool thing to make a video on, and I'll share with you guys how to make some jig heads, and yeah, let's go from there. Okay, so here's my setup down in the bunker. You can see I've got an old crappy spoon for taking out the trash that's on top of my molten lead. And here's obviously my lead pot that I use for melting all my lead in. I've got some drop style jig heads that we're going to be making today. We're going to be making probably maybe 3/16 to an 1/8 ounce jig heads off that one. We're going to have the round style jig heads. There traditionally I use a lot of 1/8 ounce jig heads. I know I'm short on 1/8 ounce, and I use the #1 hook on those as well. We'll be making some jigs off that. And then lastly, I do a lot of dragging of Lindy, using Lindy rigs and dragging worm harnesses and stuff. And so I'm going to be needing some weights made off this mold as well. You can see this old cookie tin. This cookie tin, that's going to be another video. That's what I melt my lead ingots down into. Traditionally, my lead ingots, or whatever you want to call them, I make them right out of cookie tin, melt my lead pipe down. By trade, you've heard me on a couple of my videos talk about what I do for a living. I'm a plumber. Whenever I get a lead service, this is what it ends up being. It gets recycled, and I use it for my jig heads. And I also use it for my weights for my duck decoys, but that's another story. Alright, so let's get back to work, and we'll put this stuff to action, and I'll show you how we make our jigs. Alright, so what I've done here is I'm kind of setting myself up. I've got just an assortment of #1 hooks that are laying out here. I'm going to be making 4 jigs at a time. It's pretty self-explanatory. On the jig molds, it'll tell you the different type of hook sizes that you can use, and it gives you all sorts of pointers that way so that you know what you're doing. Like I said earlier, on this one we're going to be using #1 hooks, and we're going to be pouring 1/8 ounce jig heads. Pretty self-explanatory. You put your hooks in the shape of the mold there. You can see how it's 90s in. Everything fits into place. You go ahead and close the mold. What a lot of old timers will do, and I haven't done this yet, just because I'm kind of short on time, is they'll take a torch, and when this mold is open, they heat up these ones that you're going to be pouring the molten lead into, and that kind of helps the lead flow a little bit better into the mold spores. So all right, here we go. I'm going to grab this molten lead, and it's got to be a continuous fast motion. Once you start pouring, you don't want to stop until you see everything's filled. If you stop in the process, nothing's going to match up real nice. So here we go. We're going to do the first pour. Alright, and you can see it was just a real quick process. I pour the molten lead over it, and that was the first attempt to make some good jigs. What's going to probably happen, because this mold is ice cold, when I open it up, I'm already counting on the fact that this stuff probably didn't form properly because it's cold, because the mold is cold. But I was wrong. Everything poured in perfect. Here we go. Grab a pliers and we'll pull it out of the mold. And you can see right off the bat we got some good jigs that are already made. You notice this type of jig head, it's got a barb on it right there. This is for using skirted jigs. If you want to use it for live bait, I've seen some guys cheat and file those barbs off, and then it'll made up for using live bait. When I go to Canada and things like that, obviously I don't use a lot of live bait. So we'll go ahead and we'll put some more hooks in here. And while I'm putting those in, the reason I said why we don't use a lot of live bait in Canada is whenever you cross the US-Canadian border, the government has all sorts of restrictions on you bringing soil across the border. Canada doesn't want to take the chance on being infected with some of the things that we have in our soil and whatnot, and I can't say I don't blame them. The US feels the same way when they bring it back across the border. So I went ahead, put 4 more hooks in. We'll close the jig. It's closed and all these ports are wide open, ready to go. So let's pour another quick hot bead all the way across. And you can see I kind of didn't worry about being real clean with it or being real precise with the pour. I just wanted to get it across there as fast as possible. The faster you go, that lead will stay hot and make it all the way down into the mold itself, and that's why I was able to pour these jigs without having a defect on the first run. So we'll go ahead and we'll take these out, and here we go again. They're looking pretty fine. I'll set these aside, and I think we'll do 12 jigs at first, and then once we have these 12 jigs all done, I'll show you the next process to making a jig, and that's going to be cleaning up these lead heads and making it look a little bit more refined. You don't want it to look like a hack put these together, so we'll take a little time to make them nice. All right, there we go. We're loaded. All the hooks are in. We'll do our final pour for the 12 jig heads. And we'll give it a second to cool down. Open it up, and there we are. So, okay, I'll peel these suckers off, give them a second to cool down, and then we'll move on to the next process. Got a little bit of extra lead there. We'll get rid of the extra lead into the melting pot. Burn the heck out of our fingertips while we're doing it. All right, and now we're ready to clean some of this stuff up. There's not a whole lot of burrs or anything that takes place on jig heads these small. You can see just by grabbing it and wiggling the molten lead around, or the the hardened lead, I can pretty much get the jig head to come off just the way it is. Let's see how we are with these other ones. Give her the old wiggle. Did 2 at a time there. Here's another one. Excess lead goes back into the melting pot for another day. There we go. Now, my boys always ask me, Dad, what's the benefit to making your own jig heads? And they didn't understand it because they're not the one that pays the bill. When we go to the sporting goods store, I'm the one that gets stuck with it. And with how terrible of a caster I am, sometimes you go through a lot of jig heads, or if you're fishing brush, you guys have fish flooded timber, you know how easy it is to go through a bunch of jig heads when you get snags and whatnot. So all this is going to go right back in to be melted again. And I see I just bent the heck out of this one hook, so we'll give her just a little tweak to make her straight again. And all right, let's get rid of some of these hooks and clean up the desk a little bit. Here's some mess. This one that I screwed up on, I'm going to kind of do an experiment. I'm going to take this little bit of excess lead that I have in there. We'll break that off, and we'll try using it for live bait. All right, so there we go. Got our jig heads all poured, just that quick. I usually only like doing maybe a dozen or so at a time, just because you get too many around. And for me, I've got hundreds of these jig heads made. If I can do them a dozen at a time, usually that's enough to keep my supply stocked up. If I have too many around, they end up getting damaged or broke or anything like that. So we'll consider these a success. Set those aside, and let's show you how the lead weights work. Lead weights, it's basically going to be the same thing that we're doing over with the process that we used when we made those jig heads. For me, I like using 1/2 ounce and 1/8 ounce, I think. No, it's 3/8 and 1/2 ounce. That's going to be these first two ones. This is going to be 3/8 here. I use those once in a while when I'm trolling in pretty calm situations. I don't troll real deep water, so these other 1/2 ounces will be more than enough for me. And here again, you want to have a fast, controlled pour. Just boom, we hit it that quick, and I screwed up on that first one, on the second pour there. You can see some of this overflowed into there, so we're probably going to have to redo 1 or 2 of those. And actually, we're going to have to redo both of the 3/8. These come out, those can go back into the melting pot. For these, I usually don't paint them. I usually leave them silver. I have painted them before. I really don't see an advantage to it. That's still real hot, so I'm going to let that calm down. We'll do another quick pour just to show you the process. It's going to be as fast as you can. Dump them in there. And that other one I'm not even going to pour because I already seen some spill over. Open it up. This one actually worked a little bit better. You can see right there, those 2 lead weights are ready to go. The hole's open. I do have a round file in my tackle box to open up that lead a little bit better and to file those holes around a little bit smoother. I use a leader on them, so I'm not too worried about a leader with a snap swivel. I'm not too worried about those holes being wide open. But that's just my own laziness, I guess. Let's try pouring some of the 3/8 ounce weights, and we'll see if we have some success with that. Here we're going to go real fast pour. I'm not sure if that was fast enough. Give it a second to set up. Beginner's luck. they came out perfect. There we go. Can you see the holes are wide open in that one? We'll make 2 more just to show you the process. I don't want to get too boring here. This usually works best so you get a group of friends together. When my sons were home, we could get a line together and we would have somebody pouring these, somebody cleaning them up, and then we'd put them right into paint. I like to use a powder paint, and I'll show you that process either at the end of this video, or if this video gets too long, we'll make that painting process on the next video. Here we go. We're going to go for the 3/8 ounce quick pour. You can kind of see the lead sucked down into the jig head, or into the jig mold, I should say. It's been a long night last night, and there we go. We got 2 more of that size. Ooh, that's hot. All right. That's too hot too. I better slow down. All right, let's start pouring some of these jigs that stand upright. I'm going to try a number 1 hook again. And on this mold, I really only need 1/8 ounce, and 1/8 ounce are the first 2 spaces. So we'll put hooks in those first 2 spaces, close up the mold. Give it a chance to set up. This second one that I poured, I think that one's not going to be any good. I could see that the lead didn't pour in real evenly. Oh, that one, it's not bad. That one came out all right. And I was wrong. I'm actually pouring, I'll hold this up to the camera. I'm actually pouring, if I can get it out, 2 different sizes there. I'm pouring an 1/8 ounce, and now that I can see it out of the mold, this other one here is going to be a 3/16. And those are stand-up jigs. We'll let those cool down. That was kind of sloppy. You can see some of the lead that missed the mold kind of oozed out, so I'll redo some of that. But here again, I'm pouring with cold molds. So I'm sure that I could have better success once you pour a couple of these jigs. The mold starts to heat up, and you'll find that your success with making the jig heads is much better once the mold gets hot. Let's go ahead and we'll pour these front 2 again. Start with this little guy and then move on to the big guy, and give it a second to cool down. That one was really sloppy. I'll pick that stuff up a little later on and shove it in there once it gets cold. We open up our jig, and there we go. They're starting to look better. The jigs, the molds, I keep referring to it as a jig. We'll open up our mold, and you can see that the jigs are looking better because the mold is getting warm. Once that mold gets up to temperature, then every single one that comes out will start looking 1,000 times better than what I'm pouring right now. This one I don't need a whole lot on. I don't know that I'm going to make a dozen on this, but we'll make a few just to show you the process. When I'm starting to put these hooks into the mold, I can start to feel the warmth on my fingertips, and that's a good sign because that tells me that everything is starting to heat up, and my pours should be getting more consistent and much better. Went ahead, did the first little guy, and we'll do the next one up. and we got both of them out. You can see on these ones, they came out a little bit sloppy. These drop heads, sometimes you have to take a little snips and cut off the excess lead that's on there. Other times I take a file and I'll just file it off. Alright, I'm pretty happy with the progress that we're making here. These jigs are coming right along, and the weights are as well. So anyways, appreciate you joining me. I think we're going to wrap this video up right here, and then next week we'll go ahead and we'll do the painting process. And I'm pretty excited about sharing this painting process with you. I've tried multiple ways of painting them, and they always seem to get dented up or dinged up and chipped up, and paint would come off. But I learned about powder coating, and this powder coating process is incredible. You can bang these jigs off rocks, off piers, off trees, off anything, and they hold their paint. And that'll be pretty cool. I'll share that with you next week. Appreciate you joining me this week. If you have a friend that likes the outdoors, encourage you to share my channel with them. And I appreciate your continued support. Once again, if you haven't subscribed, please click the subscribe button down on my channel, and also if you'd give me a thumbs up, that would be awesome as well. And then also, the last thing I almost forgot to tell you, don't forget to hit the bell symbol after subscribe, and that way it'll notify you of when my new painting video comes on. So alright, thanks for joining me. We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for your support.